And welcome back. Tonight in Punchline, we are still keeping an eye on 2022 politics, and we are doing this because somehow COVID-19 appears to have paused reggae. Politicians from all camps are currently back to the drawing board, strategizing on which alliances and ethnic arithmetic will give them the upper hand in the Kenyatta succession race. So tonight we want to flood these shadowy boardroom calculations from all sides with light that can help paint a picture of the likely partnerships that could emerge after the COVID-19 interruption. Now, as has been reported, a government of national unity is already being formed, with the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties certifying a coalition agreement between Jubilee and KANU as a first step in bringing Gideon Moi and his supporters formally into President Kenyatta's fold. And more partnerships are looming. A government of national unity will not just be about like-minded interests, but bluntly about the ethnic mobilization that the political class hope to marshal before the next election. So let's examine what a GNU looks like and how it can be formed. Well, it could happen at absolutely any time. A government of national unity requires no legislative instrument, no constitutional provisions, and no act of parliament. It is simply an agreement between like-minded people. Now, we have seen this multiple times in our political history, which is littered with MOU after MOU entered into and exited with relative ease. Now, let's examine the likely scenarios, and for the sake of a 2022 prediction, let us quantify each member of the GNU with the potential numbers that he or she would hope to marshal from their respective strongholds based on the 2017 voting register. Now, a winning coalition needs 50% plus one of the total vote to carry the day. And if we were to use the total voter turnout from the same year, that's 2017, which was 77%, then the winners would need at least 9.8 million voters. But as the president's GNU is formed, remember, Deputy President William Ruto will craft his own version of a government of national unity in waiting. Now, here are two possible scenarios of the competing coalitions and how they will weigh against each other. So let's first start by examining this first scenario, which is featuring the incumbent and formidable allies. Now, in this first scenario, consider what would happen if the GNU of President Uhuru Kenyatta were to consolidate all the formidable allies in the political landscape. Now, in such a scenario, we assume that President Kenyatta and his key ally Raila Odinga could together persuade Kalonzo Musyoka and Charity Ngilu of Ukambani, Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula of Western Kenya, Ali Hassan Joho of the coast, to take at least half of all Nairobi votes, plus have key partnerships in Kisii, Northeastern and Narok. Now, another key assumption that we are making in this first scenario is that Central Kenya has been split 50-50 between President Kenyatta and a coalition of MPs allied to the Deputy President. Now, in such a case, the new 50% plus one is a little over 8 million votes, in which the GNU allied to President Uhuru Kenyatta could surpass the other coalition by at least 4 million votes. But now let's consider another possibility where Deputy President William Ruto has gained ground across the country, not just because of his hustler message, but because formidable allies are unhappy with the limited positions that a Kenyatta-Odinga handshake could offer them. So President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, in such a scenario, would lose key support, particularly from the leaders of Ukambani and of Western Kenya, where both Kalonzo Musyoka and Musalia Mudavadi, both who have said that they believe that Raila Odinga has already had more than enough chances to try for the presidency and that 2022 is their turn, would leave the Kenyatta agreement. So in such a case, Kenyatta and Odinga could still have the support of Joho and gain at least 50% of the support elsewhere. Now, in this second scenario, then the new 50% plus one would be 7.5 million votes or thereabout. William Ruto's coalition could very easily carry the day in such a scenario with a margin of over 1.7 million votes. Now, please remember that the aforementioned scenarios are based on the 2017 voter register numbers, but now we want to consider the 2019 census numbers, which showed a significant number of new potential voters by 2022. Now, in the coast region, for instance, there could be a pool of 1 million new eligible voters. These are people who were at least 16 years old by the time of the census in 2019, and they would have attained the registration age by 2022. Central Kenya, in such a scenario, could have over 1.7 million of these new potential voters, while the Rift Valley could gain a whopping 2.3 million possible new voters. Therefore, based on these particular new voter numbers, let us now consider scenarios layered with these census numbers. Now, the following assumptions have been made in this model, including the application of a 77% average national voter turnout, like in the last election. And in this hypothesis, we also apply 100% of the new census numbers across the board. Finally, we also assume a split Kikuyu vote and a split vote in Nairobi as well. Now, with these new census numbers, we have to go back to our first model, which considers the incumbent backed by formidable allies across the country. In such a scenario, a government of national unit, or a BBI coalition, if you like, could garner at least 14 million votes against any other challenger, with 8 million votes. In another scenario, where key leaders like those of Ukambani and Eastern decide to back William Ruto, again primarily because they are unhappy with the options that a BBI coalition could offer them, then a hustler victory could be secured with at least 13 million votes. Such a coalition could win with a margin of over 2 million votes against the closest challenger. Now, these are just some of the calculations considered in close quarters. They are first and foremost assuming who will be in the race in 2022. Further assumptions that have been made are that Kenyans would come out in large numbers in a succession election, and that this would mean that they would continue to largely vote along tribal lines and not on issues. But there are many unknowns in an election, including surprise presidential candidates and changes to the electoral laws, the overall state of the nation, of course, and political betrayals, as well as unlikely coalitions could emerge. All in all, time will tell. We're taking a short break. We're back with more after this.